Very pleasant good morning to one and all. Thank you for being with us today. This is Antara Kundu, Project Executive, South Asian Institute for Advanced Research and Development. From the oldest members of the institution to every new face, we extend the heartiest welcome to our one-day international brainstorming session on strengthening the economy of SAARC nations through resource mobilization. This webinar has been jointly organized by South Asian Institute for Advanced Research and Development in association with SAARC Culture Center, Sri Lanka. On behalf of my team, I sincerely thank and acknowledge every one of you who extended help and support to us. Key panelists are Mr. K.Siddhartha, strategic thinker, art scientist, and advisor to the government, strategic thinker, perception management consultant, thought leadership trader, and advisor to several international and state governments. He is a mentor of over 1,600 civil servants, film personalities, entrepreneurs, policymakers, and author of 45 books and 116 research articles. I cordially request Dr. A. Upadhyay to chair the session. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Antaraji. Would be very happy to invite Mr. K.Siddhartha, strategic thinker, art scientist, and advisor to the government. So please.
Thank you so much. Thank you for giving this privilege of being with you. Thank you, Vishwajitji. Thank you, Dr. Upadhyay, for introducing me so well, and Antaraji as well, and all of those distinguished people who are present in different capacities in this place. I imagine growth and development plus resource mobilization is best achieved when society, economy, local wisdom, and aspirations of the people, strategic, experiential, and identities match. If they do not go into match, it leaves a lot of cluttering in policy making, a lot of disability and anomaly in policy and its implementation. It leaves a lot of anomaly between what different type of policy makers belonging to different regions go on to think. Incidentally, SAARC nations are out of sync of them. All of them were part of India at one point of a time, once having an unmasked historical and cultural treasure. Of course, enormous amount of local wisdom and knowledge. But then that was pulverized during medieval invasion, and also some of the rules superimposed with the British colonial subversion. And a lot of has been disrupted, and a lot has been almost dilapidated in this case. While the resources remain, while the wisdom remains, while the people remain, while the thinking remains, but then since there has been some amount of a superimposition, either constitutionally or through policy making, or in the name of, or in the garb of so-called globalization, that has created a lot of anomalies. As long as these anomalies exist, it is always going to be an issue associated with resource mobilization and bringing development into the forefront. We'll keep on growing, we'll keep on changing, but whether development will going to take place with a lot of sustainability aspect, that will leave a question mark. Now, most of these anomalies are reflected in and that reflected in the prevalent thinking. Now, imagine one of these type of a thinking is an economic identity versus a Western identity. The economic identity of most of these countries happen to be associated with a decentralized development, using the local resources, using local wisdom, using the skill of the local people, using a variety of type of techniques and technologies associated with it, including in India, some of them what we're going to be calling it as a jugaad technology. It also goes on to be getting itself reflected in the form of the way economies are managed at the local level and at different aspects as well. But then when we are talking about a centralized economy with an attendant emphasis on creating a brand, increasing the size of the economy, increasing its brandability, increasing the various ways by way of which certain things can be produced on a very, very large scale, that is always going to be bringing both of these aspects into conflict. Now, this prevalent thinking in anomalies and in a certain type of mismatch is reflected in agriculture development as well. Prior to a lot of aspects, in fact, that is going to be still prevalent. This anomaly is going to be ecological versus colonial farming. Now imagine there used to be a leguminous crop in the whole of the Gangetic Plain region, mostly dominating Bihar and West Bengal, and also some portions of Bangladesh as well, Kesari, which was having a property of fixing nitrogen to such an extent that the amount of nitrogen needed by the agriculture farm was no more required once this Zad crop, I repeated, Zad crop was grown. That means during March and April. Now, it was removed from the agricultural scenario in the wake of a branding in the farm, in the wake of a narrative that was built up to promote a Western farm of a chemical fertilizer-based farming. And then the result was India itself had to shell out no less than 1 lakh crores of rupees every year, only because it was ecologically dominant. Now, most of the Western farming techniques do not go on to be having that type of a outlook, except, of course, now onwards, that they are promoting ecological farming. And then this has already damaged. There are some of these things which are already existing in the rural areas of SAARC countries. The third thinking had been in the notion of industrialization. Industrialization in Western parlance has been synonymous to large-scale manufacturing, while industrialization in most of these SAARC countries have been associated with a process of value addition to psych, skill, resources, management, as well as to the scalability aspect. Now imagine it was a process of value addition to how is it that people can go to think, a process of value addition to how is it that you enhance your skill, how is it that you utilize your almost all of those type of prevalent skills, a process also of utilization of the resources, not exploitation of the resources. And there was a fundamental difference between both of them. There has been this type of a thinking has been in form of transportation as well, in variety of forms of a way that we used to be transporting it. Now, how is it that Bangladesh could have benefited out of the decline of the inland water transportation is left to anyone to imagine. And the same thing goes with Pakistan as well, Afghanistan as well, and to an extent Nepal as well. Now this has been replaced with high-speed transportation, but then unless this problem is going to be sorted out in this manner, and unless that is going to be brought in sync, both of them are going to be connected, the problems will go on to remain the way it is. Governance associated aspects are always a part of it, because the previous government and of course a lot of people going to manage it in this manner. That is what we can go to call in India as Samaj Satta, while most of the management and governance in SAARC countries have been imposed in the form of a democracy, better be called as a mobocracy, of course, in this case. The management of the environment in this case as well. While a management of environment has been in the dominant form, like talking about a better ecology is better economics. That has been with almost all of these countries. But then economics has taken a precedent, and GDP-based economy has taken precedence over a lot of things. Now, GDP-based economy is something like you pollute the environment, you increase the GDP. You increase crime, you increase GDP. You also go on to kill people, you increase GDP, and then you're going to manage it, you again going to increase GDP, and then you complicate the situation, you again going to increase the GDP, and so on and so forth. So that has been a dysfunction that has been always there. And that's been because of the superimposition of the Western motivated information management over this form of local management and local wisdom. This is largely because of a thinking. Like that is, SAARC countries people are endowed with, and naturally endowed with, most of them still, and that is going to be there, except for the present generation, linear thinking, design thinking, while the thinking that has been imposed over them has been mostly linear. That is a economy, and that is an example of linear thinking. Otherwise, there was no way that so-called industrialization, industrial revolution would have created so much amount of a problem associated with carbon dioxide. It was never associated with it, and this is largely a product of such type of a thinking. So what it has done is that all of this has stymied resource mobilization. That's why we're going to talk about a pull-based design thinking dominated strategy. And when you go on to talk about the future of it, you understand it. This future will go on to become better. First is by recasting strategic consideration. Now, recasting strategic consideration basically means that not putting one against the other. Like what some of these countries like south of India, we have been trying to do it, pitting China and India together, and that has resulted in almost a complete dilapidation of the economy in this case. Now, such type of pitting against each other without building a social capital, without building a strategic base, in this case, has always been a problem. Unless recasting of the strategic constitution is taking place, there is no way that resource mobilization will go on to take it further. Second has been that is a complementarity in resource sharing. Such type of complementarity in resource sharing is essential because they all have been part of the same country at one point of a time. So consequently, they have a similar type of a geographical base, a similar type of environmental base over which they can go on to do it. Of course, that will go on to require a specialization to a large extent or to a small extent of sorts. Now, coupled with it, it has to be realized, it's a high time that is we are going to realize, realizing it, that dollar is something that is going to be declining in due course of a time. It is just a matter of time. That is that given the current geopolitical situation in the whole of the world, with an avowed aim of allowing dollar to be dismantled, it is essential that these countries represent themselves through soft power projection. And this soft power projection cannot be delinked from India at all, because India will always go on to be at the forefront of a soft power projection. And this soft power projection will go on to help Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nepal, all of them, because they are intrinsically linked to the products, intrinsically linked to the skills, intrinsically linked to the management aspect of it as well. The fourth will be associated with sharing of a space economy and a space technology. In this case, they have to understand that they are privileged to have one of those countries very nearby with a launching center very close to that of equator in Sriharikota, and one that can go to launch satellites at the cheapest possible rate, and India will be at the forefront of a space revolution, and it will go on to become a leading country that way. It's just a matter of time. So these countries have to give a space so that a space technology can go on to solve a lot of problems that technology has created. And two more aspects associated with it. One is providing access to the Indian Ocean Rim countries, for which all of these countries will come together. If they do not go on to come together, what will happen is it will go on to become a zone of perennial conflict with India, with Bangladesh, with Sri Lanka, all of these countries. Now, why is it that Afghanistan should be shorn of taking advantage of the northern side of Indian Ocean and that of Arabian Sea? And that can happen only if access to Indian Ocean is going to be shared by one of them. The security of Malacca Strait and Bab el-Mandeb, as well as the Hormuz Strait, goes on to be the joint responsibility of all of them, rather than pitting some of these superpowers or powers in this case. And to last it, there must be some amount of enhanced cooperation with respect to disaster management, as Rajiv Mishra ji was talking about. Now, such type of an enhanced management in disaster management has been taken, an initiative has been taken by India. And one can imagine the example of Mozambique, one can imagine the example of Zimbabwe, where India had been very instrumental, and also, of course, giving this prior information to Bangladesh as well, how exactly that they can go to manage it on cyclone forecasting, and how is it that they can go to actually manage the technology of protecting themselves in this manner. Now, understanding the power projection and separating religion out of their state policy will go a long way in trying to bridge this type of an anomaly, in trying to bring all of these aspects into sync with each other. Unless it's like an individual when whose mind is going to be cluttered by what he wants to project and what he is. So his mind is always going to be cluttered, and consequently, the investment of thinking that is required in trying to forge ahead, in trying to move ahead, is always going to be a problem. It is also going to be with countries as well. Unless these countries go on to sort out this aspect, unless they understand that they have to be in sync with each other, economic growth will going to take place, development will never going to take place, and that will going to take place also. Even if it take place, it will only be at the cost of their base, that is ecology. We have to understand that ecology will go on to be our forefront. It is our resource, it is our heritage, and ecology is what will go on to determine our cultural ethos as well in the coming days. That is how we can go to end. Thank you, all of you, for having given me this opportunity. Thank you, Vishwajit ji. Thank you, Upadhyay ji, for giving me this much amount of time, introducing me so well. Thank you.
Thank you, Siddhartha. It was really a great pleasure to listen your views. Wonderful it was. Yes, thank you very much.
The next question is for Mr. K.Siddhartha. What can be the role of new forms of governance, such as environmental governance, water governance, to strengthen the economy?
Well, we always going to harp on. I'm going to pick up from the same place Ajit ji has talked about. He did mention me, that is, if my comments will be significant in those places or not. But so far, what we have done is take the case of water management. Our emphasis has been mostly on a structural-based engineering approaches, with concomitant building of the dams, reservoirs, and so on and so forth. Now, the amount of destruction and damage that they have done without, again, a concomitant effect on empowering the people in identifying the identities of the people and allowing them to improve upon anything of their agriculture or their livelihood, that is left to a lot of question. Because when you go on to build a dam and a reservoir, you don't only go on to block the flow of the river, you also go to allow the people to move upstream. Now, 20 villages, they move upstream, and then the only resource they have in those places is the forest. They go for indiscriminate deforestation. What it does is that it allows a lot of silt to move and starts filling the reservoir. So a reservoir whose life was to last for something like 300 years, it starts filling it up and ultimately fills up in 75 years of time. So from the angle of cost-benefit analysis, this is one technique or this one form of management of water inserted by the Western countries has not proven good at all. So water governance, if you can go to take a look at it, involving people, educating people, not literating them. I'm talking about educating people about the ingenious methods that used to remain in those places, like some of them in Bangladesh, in Nepal, in India, in Pakistan, and they were ingenious methods where the people themselves used to manage it. There was no need for a centralized water management. So what we require is water governance in this case is a decentralized, empowered water management with a certain degree of a power given to the people and identities who can go on to use their local wisdom for that. If you do not go to do that, we keep on using the centralized water management systems, and it will keep on degrading the environment as well. Now that won't allow us to sustain. So sustainability is always going to be in reference to the people. So the people themselves will not be able to sustain. It's like hitting yourself in some way or the other, and that is going to be the major danger. Now, even with respect to the notions of industrialization, as we talked about, you can go to convert any action, any activity, any type of a thinking into that form. Industrialization is a thinking. It's a thinking concerning a process of value addition. Now, without a value addition to your skill, to your thinking, you may go to have a skill, but then the concomitant attitude is missing in those people, like what has happened in most of the parts of India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, not too much in Sri Lanka, but also in Nepal as well. That is, the attitudinal changes are not tuned to it. So what happens is that they do go on to work, but they work in a very uncoordinated manner. Ultimately, what it goes on to do is that the Western form of industrial growth brings about a lot of demerits to the environment. And who will go on to clean the environment? Ultimately, we have to do it. The people will go on to suffer. So it's no fun, that is, industrializing them, giving them money, making them sick, and then treating them, and then again having a health governance as well. That is, it is going to be entangled into many complications all in all. So we have to adopt somewhere a model. We have to develop some model of minimalistic living, which used to be in this place, which will not go on to entail a lot of investment of money, which will only go on to entail cooperation among the people. Of course, it looks like utopian, but then anything that goes on to look utopian at one point of a time, that has mankind has been responsible for making them a reality as well. Unless you do it, there is no way we can go on to save these countries. We can go on to save the planet as well. And unless South Asian countries happen to take an initiative to save the planet, there is no future for the planet, ecologically, economically, and even from the perspective of peace for the whole of the world.
Okay, so actually, I wanted to ask to what extent strategic considerations and security issues determine the future of economy and resource mobilization?
This is, I will go on to answer it in two different ways. Strategic considerations means that you go on to see a common future. Tactical considerations means that you are looking for an immediate gain of sorts. Now, most of the countries in South Asia, for whatever reason or whatever mistakes India has made in the past or any other country has made in the past, they go for a tactical policy rather than a strategic policy. Now, how is it that a tactical policy of allowing China to bring close to Sri Lanka and allow them to control their economy and ports, or even in Bangladesh, will going to be helpful when you are at loggerheads with your main neighbor? How is it going to be possible? Now, it's like what has happened in Ukraine. So what NATO did in Ukraine was they allowed the entire type of changes to take place in the psyche of the people, in the way people used to think, making them anglicized, making them almost Americans, and they were surrounding Russia from every side. Now, if I ask you, if West Bengal tomorrow thinks like giving China a base for building its military, is it that India will go on to see it that way? India will keep on remaining quiet. So that is what exactly is a strategic consideration. Strategic considerations are founded on one basis of perceiving a common future, having a design thinking. Now, Indian Ocean, you cannot go to separate India out of it at all. It's simply not possible because India is in the throes of building a blue water economy, a blue water navy as well. And when it has a blue water navy, it will go on to move with one aircraft carrier. It will go on to have at least 6 destroyers. It will go on to have one submarine as well. And it will be backed by, imagine, 164 aeroplanes with 7 satellites having a surveillance of it. How is it that you can go on to deal with it? The best thing is to be together, because you have been together some time back as well. Indian Ocean must be restored to SAARC countries, largely because that is going to be the future of Maldives, and that will go on to help especially specialization as well. It will go on to help Bangladesh. It will go on to help Sri Lanka. Why is it to allow some other countries to rule it and make a mess of it? And this is what has happened. Once we have given, once any country has taken Diego Garcia, then it is going to be a roller coaster of problems because everyone will want tomorrow Americans to be out. And the day American dollar is not going to be at that level, and it is going to be just a matter of time. Mark my words, it's going to be only about 7 or 8 years. American dollar has to decline. Or most of the countries have already started doing it so. So it has to be guided by that strategic consideration. Another strategic consideration has to be space. We have enough amount of control over space in terms of technology, in terms of reach, in terms of involvement of the manpower. Tomorrow and it's day after tomorrow, it's going to be a matter again of time when India is building a complete city, a space city, in 2,300 acres of a land in Sriharikota, imagine how many countries and something like Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, how will be able to compete it. So you have to share the data that India has to give it to you. You have to share the disaster management data also, and help that India will going to provide it to you. You have to share the remote sensing data that India has to provide it to you. You have to share the knowledge mapping that India maps for you and for your country as well. That makes a strategic consideration. And also, when you go to talk about entering into a conflict, now none of these countries are in a position to enter a conflict and go on to win it. It's very difficult to win. The best thing is to come together. That is what is the strategy. And the strategic concession will mean, in this case, that be together, whatever the differences in terms of religion or perspective or past maybe, because only that will go on to make you strong. And share all of this local wisdom, all of this knowledge that India goes on to gain from space. You cannot go on to separate India out of it. You cannot go on to make it simply possible that India will go on to go out of Indian Ocean rim countries. You cannot, it's simply not possible that tomorrow something like 20 or 30 ports are not being developed in Indian Ocean rim countries by India. It's simply not possible. India is doing it so, and India is doing it at a rapid pace. That is what exactly is strategic concession. And unless that happens, there is no way these countries will be in any position to utilize their resources and also mobilize their resources and also go to bring a lot of benefit to the people concerned as well.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
May I ask a question to Siddharth sir also?
Yes, sir.
Please,
Sir,
please go ahead.
as a strategist or as a thinker, and resource mobilization sectors and different sectors are there, and as I told in my lecture that there are lots of opportunities in case of environmental resources too. So what is your suggestions regarding how the nations of different SAARC countries can also utilize these resources? And as already Ajit sir told that there are several other resources too. So what is your vision, sir, and what should be the strategy to follow the government or the unity of SAARC to utilize this human resource as well as this environmental resource to convert it into the economic resource?
As I understand the question, I think that is the basic question is what type of a strategy will be required essentially for the purpose of building a human resource and which can be converted into an environmental and economic resource. And I am clubbing both of them together, of course, for some various reasons. Now, the first part in this case, if you're going to go for reverse planning and if you go on to insert design thinking in this case, incidentally, I do take design thinking classes and experiential economy classes in Dubai, Sydney, and Singapore for management students in this case. I have been there. Now, I'm going to frame a roadmap for that purpose. The first roadmap in this case is you have to pick up people who are going to be amenable to such type of a change. It's not too difficult also. You're always going to find people in the rural areas or other areas whom you can go to categorize and whom you can go to classify. I'm just going to give an example. In the week of the COVID pandemic, there were a good number of migrants who thronged into one area in Bihar, that was Champara. So of course it was that they were all feeling a problem because they were labor groups and they had nothing to eat, nowhere to go. One of the administrators in that region, he asked all of them, what is your skill? What is your skill? So in a sense, what he did was that he surveyed all the skill of the people. And after having surveyed it, he classified all of these skills. And after having classified it, it provides an ecosystem for all of these skills to flourish. Now, let's understand this part. This is something is what exactly is required for Bangladesh, for India, for Nepal, and for other countries, because these people go on to grow in a different type of agroclimatic conditions with a different type of an iconography, under which their culture has evolved, their thinking has evolved, their creativity has evolved, and everyone goes on to be almost dexterous in some type of a skill. The attitude may be absent in this case, but the skill is there. What you have to imbibe in those people is an attitude whereby they can go on to work together. And once you have done that, it's like saying in a very general parlance, a personality development for these people. Because once they go on to have this type of an attitude of working together, building their own social capital, what will happen is they will start congregating in the form of building a big resource base. And that will go on to be one form of industrialization. You are picking 100 people known for one type of a resource, one type of a skill, and they're producing one type of a product with some amount of a difference. You do not going to require large scale industries for that purpose. That is going to be number one. Now, when these people are going to be working with certain things like, let's say, even in India, I'll go to take example from India. Everywhere in India, the basis of rural industrialization is agroclimatic condition. For example, wherever mulberry is grown, you'll want to find silk being grown. Wherever Bhadarwa and Bhadarwal sheep are going to be reared, that is where you're going to find a shawl industry being developed. That is in Himachal Pradesh. And wherever you're going to find a lot of trees who are bearing soft wood, that is where a carving on wood is going to be developed. Wherever you're going to find the region being so dry, like in Kutch and adjoining regions, what the people have done is that they have developed ingenious techniques to take salt out of it, like Agaria people, as we are talking about. So it's an ingenious material. No machine, nothing is going to be used in those regions. So we have to minimize machine. That is number one. Second part is we have to dwell upon people on the type of dwellings that they go on to build. Now, what is happening in most of the rural areas in India, in Bangladesh, in Nepal, is that people are imitating the Western form of house building and dwelling building. When you go on to build something which is built of concrete in a rural area, imagine the problem that you will start inviting. One of the problems is that the walls will go on to get heated, and in 45 degrees centigrade of a temperature, it's almost impossible to live in a rural area in India. But this is the problem that they have themselves created. The housing used to be made of mud. It used to be made of bamboo. So it was naturally cooler in those places. Now, the people will go on to go for buying something like a cooler, electricity, and then in the next stage, air conditioner. Now, air conditioner means, take an example of Delhi, with almost 1 crore air conditioners working in Delhi, the nights of Delhi also going to look like there is a loop blowing out of it in this case. Now, that is the condition. It's not livable at all. It's not at all livable unless you go on to actually convert into energy-intensive society. Now, energy-intensive society means you create a problem, then solve another problem, then solve something else, then solve something else. Ultimately, you'll run up. You're going to talk about the use of lithium. You're going to talk about even the use of hydrogen. What you will ultimately go on to do is that you'll keep on producing energy, and a byproduct of energy is heat, always going to be there. Now, trying to build a sustainable society, trying to build a sustainability, you have to go back to nature. And for that purpose, you have to have a sight. You have to have a mentality for that purpose. Development doesn't go to comprise that you have a high amount of income and you have a lot of wealth and you suffer from cancer every day and that you're not able to work. This is not development. This is growth. It is going to be change. Development is always going to be holistic. Development is always going to be having a choice. People in rural areas right now do not going to have a choice. And when you're going to be having a choice, that is going to be empowerment. That is what is true empowerment is. A choice of living, a choice of doing a work, and a choice of taking your career, taking your skill in a certain direction, taking it in a manner that is going to be desired. You cannot go on to ask a fish to run in the same manner as a tiger goes on to run. This is what we have been doing in most of urban and rural areas of India. That is largely because we are shorn of the understanding of the psyche of the people, and we're going to dent them also. So that is going to be one of these type of strategies. And then what you have to do is you have to simplify your functionality of working in India. Now, the basic problem in India is, and being a scholar, I can always go on to say it, so I do not want to belong to government. The one thing that holds the progress of country is this bureaucracy. The only part that is holding the progress of the country is this bureaucracy, nothing else. You can go to have high-class academicians who do not going to be having an identity. And why? Because the bureaucracy, which is a remnant of the British legacy, They are the one whose job is to thwart that type of a development, whose job is to see that they do not going to grow, largely because they are built up with such type of a psyche. So you have to bring about a lot of change in the way governance goes on to take place in the rural areas. That's the second part. And the third is you have to always go on to think of encourage people who are going to be having innovations. Like take an example, one of those type of hutments that used to be built in Kampuchea is it's made of bamboo. So it is going to be, of course, it's a hutment, it's a hut, but it's made in such a manner that the moment the water comes in that place and the water level rises, it starts floating like a boat. Now, why you cannot go on to build it in some of these regions like Kosi? Why you cannot go on to build in the lower Gangetic plain even in Bangladesh as well, where these things are going to be required? What you require is only to allow the people to be together. Allow that social capital goes on to be intact in those places. And that is one way of doing it so. And of course, that is going to be strategic planning. And that is going to be a strategic consideration as well. And when Prime Minister Modi goes on to say that he is bound to make India a Vishwaguru, then the concept is use all of this local wisdom. And sooner or later, SAARC countries are going to be falling into that vision. Because there is no way that they can go on to go for a completely super energy intensive society with an emphasis on increasing their income, but at the same time, a walking dead man of sorts with a variety of type of diseases and with a variety of type of problems that is going to be affecting the society in which they're going to live. Unless you are in peace, unless you're going to be having a choice, there is no way you can allow people to grow at all. It's simply not possible. However amount of money you may go to have.
Thank you, sir.
Biswajit ji, you were responding to Siddhartha ji. Please carry on. I'll join later.
Okay. Now, I'm just saying that really it's a very versatile answer he has provided. And ma'am, you please say, and after that, I have just one question to Ajit Pai sir, and after that, we will go for conclusion.
Sorry. Anuraji, when you asked, I was add a little bit to what you asked. That in national education policy, Siddhartha, when you were responding, so many things that you were sharing that what I had in my mind. In national education policy, they have emphasized a lot on cultural studies. Many a time what it exactly happens is that till the time we do not realize either as an individual or as community or as SAARC countries, we do not realize that what potential, what really treasure that we have, we will not come forward with the confidence or to share that. In national education policy, they have emphasized a lot on languages, literature, even indigenous local knowledge system also. They've talked about Indian Institute of Translation and Interpretation. There again, the languages, literature will be getting due respect. And at the same time, many times it happens that from Gujarat, people don't know what exactly Bengal has or maybe Maharashtra has. So the moment we start knowing India or maybe other SAARC countries, all the possible that indivisibility of this ethnicity will come forward. So somewhere that cultural studies will play a very, very vital role. And I'm very optimistic about national education policy. If it is really executed in its right spirit, I think it will make huge impact. Because with certain background, I have observed that it makes huge difference. Maybe it be Indian classical dance or maybe naturopathy, yoga, NCC, literature, language. No, everything has added something to my personality. And if that happens somewhere, interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary study and cultural studies, I think somewhere as a nation and maybe as a collective notion, it will help us. Thank you.
May I respond to that slightly?
Yes, please, sir.
See, that's the basic difference. When you have a country which has 15,000 years old civilization, and why I'm saying it so? Because, of course, that was the time when Vedas used to be in force, like largely. They were not written because we always used to follow Vachya Parampara, that means it was through speech. And that was 15,000 years ago. And then we had a Ram Rajya, and then it was a Mahabharata, and then it was a Buddhist era, and so on and so forth. It's a different matter that 1,380 years of Indian history has been completely wiped out or removed, so that the Indians don't want to feel proud of this fact. Now, having said that, Any country that has a 15,000 years of a trial and error of managing people, managing resources, managing its environment, and trying to do a lot of things in a variety of ways is bound to have a treasure. And it is this treasure that people require to know. Now, the only obstruction that I go to see is the perception of a good number of people who are young. And why is it that they don't go to realize these things? Is because of the fact that they have not been taught. They may be literate, but they are not educated. Education is all about values. Education is all about sincerity. Education is all about building social capital. Education is all about getting yourself empowered by empowering other people. Education is all about innovation. Education is going to be all about thinking of the people, thinking of the animals, thinking of the plants. Unless you can go on to co-join with them, there is no possibility that you will always keep on creating a trouble and keep on managing it. Keep creating a trouble, keep on managing it. Like what most of the bureaucrats in Uttar Kashi did was, I don't know whether you know the real reason for it or not. They were given a task to plant trees. So they did plant trees. But what they did was, they removed oak and planted pine trees in those places. Now, pine tree has a lot of leaf litter. Oak is able to bind the soil so much amount, in such a great amount. So when the stream started moving faster, then all the pine trees were uprooted. And that was one of the most important cause for a GROF related. That means glacial lake outburst flood related flood in that place. And that was how exactly took a place of a deluge. So we have to ultimately debureaucratize the system. Unless that happens, power is given to the people, and particularly those people who are not only literate, educated people, who understand the essence of a culture. There is culture as a resource, local wisdom as a resource, and the ingenious method by way of which certain things used to be managed, then there is no way we can go ahead at all. Merely building a Western model of managing water resources, managing agriculture, even managing industry has not borne fruit at all. We'll keep on talking about global warming, and ultimately we'll keep on warming our atmosphere, keep on melting our glaciers. Then one of these days, the water will go to rise. We'll talk about how to manage the rising water, and that is how the life will keep on going. You will be completely cluttered, and that is not development at all. When you are worried, it's not development. Development is equivalent to being happy. Development is equivalent to feeling good. Development is all about feeling beautiful. It's not about feeling attractive. It's not about that's true. That's where the semiotics and the semantics come, and that is where the difference lies. When we talk about dharma and religion, both of these words are not the same. Dharma is your kartavya, your duty as a human being. Religion is something like a dogma, that is, it has a set sort of a protocol that you have to follow. Now, this is also part of education. So when you talk about when you're going to talk about Bhagavan, that also means that environment, as we're going to say in Hindustani or in Indian ethos, Karna Karna mein Bhagwan hai. A tree is your God, a river is your God, and that is how we have empowered it. All the rivers in India have been named after girls, and that is an ingenious method of empowering the girls. Except for two rivers, Damodar and Brahmaputra, there is no river that is a male at all. Now, something on which our life is based, we go on to be equating it with women, and that is how we go on to be empowering them. Our three goddesses are all going to be women. One of destruction, that is Durga, one of a literary figure, that is Saraswati, and one that is responsible for all the type of destruction, that is Kali. All of them are gods. And one, of course, which goes on to give you wealth, are all women. So empowerment, ultimately, when you have to empower people, you have to give it to the girls, you have to give it to the women. And women in India is not aurat. Aurat is an Arabic word. Women in India are nari. That is nari. Nari tum keval shraddha ho. We have to also understand this part, that whenever we are talking about disasters, then disasters have a meaning in Vedas. And how exactly we going to say it? So if someone can go to follow in Hindi, it Kamaini goes on to begin with it. हिमगिरी के उतुंग शिखर पर बैठ शिला की शीतल छां, एक पुरुष भीगे नयनों से देख रहा था प्रलय प्रवाह. नीचे जल था, ऊपर हिम था, एक तरल था, एक सघन, एक तत्व की ही प्रधानता, कहो उसे जड़िया चेतन. That is the genius of a civilized. India and SAARC countries were civilized. Culture is what we have imported from the West. That is where we have to separate it in terms of semantics.
Thank you, sir. And it's a really wonderful you have explained. Thank you for wonderfully highlighted on that issues. And really, hopefully, we will definitely support the SAARC countries through these notions. So with this, once again, I thanks to all of you on behalf of SIARD, as I have to come for a Government of West Bengal's program, but still I am listening all your discussions and all that. So thank you once again. Now I would request to Antara to give the vote of thanks and for the session.
Yes, so as we have come nearly to the end of the session, first and foremost, I would like to express my appreciation to the speakers and panelists for their valuable contribution to our webinar on one-day international brainstorming session about strengthening the economy of SAARC nations through resource mobilization. And before ending my closing remarks, I would like to convey a special thanks to all the team members of SIARD. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Stay safe.